Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. So I am going to be, in this Photoshop tutorial, showing you how to do some familiar tricks and then also adding to it. So we're going to look at replacing this dog with something silly. So in class, when I teach this tutorial, I encourage students to pick maybe a mythological creature or some other type of animal that you wouldn't usually see on a leash. So we're going to use the content aware fill in order to get rid of the dog, even though he's a really cute dog, so that we can put another animal there in its place. So I already have my animal picked out. It's going to be a tiger, and then I'll show you how we can refine the edge of that selection in order to make it seamless when we bring the tiger from one image to the other. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is make a copy of our background layer. Number one, just in case we mess up, that's something, it's kind of like an insurance policy there in the background. And then we can do anything we want to this layer because we have a background there as a backup. Okay, so to get rid of this dog, we're going to use the Lasso Tool, which is hidden underneath this magnetic lasso. There's usually, 3 or 4 tools under each tool. That little arrow indicates that there's some hidden ones there. So I like the Lasso Tool for using content aware fill because you can just make a basic selection around the area. I'm being very careful not to touch the outline of the dog because I want Photoshop to be able to fill the marching ants with the pixels that are around them. So it's going to do a pretty good job of blending those together. So you can see my marching ants here. All I have to do is go up to Edit Fill, and then if you're following along at home, you can try this too. You want to make sure it says Content Aware and then click OK. So when I click OK, it's going to, again, do like an autofill based on the surrounding pixels. So it should just erase the dog. So I click OK. There it is. It does a pretty good job. Command D to deselect, or you can go up to Select, Deselect, and then I can just bring my tiger over. So in this picture here, I'm not going to bother making a copy of this background layer because we're only going to use it for one thing. So instead of using the Lasso Tool, which is like a freehand tool, you can see it's sort of like a, I can just kind of draw wherever. That's not what I want. I want an easier tool for selecting the outline. So I'm going to hold this down, select the magnetic lasso tool, and then this will allow us to zip along that edge of contrast. So it does a pretty good job. Sometimes, like down here, it's going to kind of get lost in the leaves probably. So it's finding that edge, and I'm not even clicking. I'm just dragging, and it's automatically zipping along that edge that I see here. Whoops, it cut off his toes, so I'm probably going to have to come back and do a little bit of editing. And it might be easier if I zoomed in for you to see, so I'll do that in a minute. Okay, so all the way around, it does a pretty good job. Now here it's kind of losing some of his fur, so I have to pay attention to that whenever I refine the edge. Now refine edge just refers to making it smoother, making it like a feathered edge, somehow adapting that edge to what I need. So you can see here if I zoom in, I'm missing a few things, like first of all, there's a pixelated image, but it is what it is. So there's some fur here that I'm missing elsewhere. So up here at the top, whenever you have any of the selection tools clicked, you can have selected mask as one of your options on the options bar. And remember, the options bar changes based on what tool you have selected. Okay, so here it's displaying on red. You can change the view. I like overlay a lot because it's really clear to see what you have selected and what's outside the selection. So I'm missing part of his paw. What I can do is click Smart Radius. I don't know what the radius needs to be set to. I usually don't do anything. And then if you click, it tries to find that edge. If you try this top one, it's like more of a selection. If you try this bottom one, it's a little bit more refined. So I might use that for maybe, oops, let's try this one. So it's like adds to the selection. That's too much, so I'm going to do Command Z, and then kind of goes in there. There we go. See, it kind of found that little fur thing. It kind of finds really complicated edges. Here, we missed a spot. There we go. So that's refine edge. Click on either of these two things, go between like adding or subtracting from selection. You can also feather the edge a little bit to make it more nuanced, so it's not just a straight edge. Okay, so here's our selection. We're going to copy that, so edit, copy, and then we're going to go back to my other document, edit, paste. So it should paste on top. Ooh, look how giant he is. So if any of you remember how to resize an image, it's either going under edit and then free transform, or as it tells you right here, Command T. And then when you hit Command T, you have to hold Shift, otherwise this happens. We don't want that. So hold Shift, and then it will stay in proportion. His little back paw has disappeared, but that's okay. We're not perfectionists right now. Tigers are pretty big. I've learned that from Tiger King over the quarantine. So that looks pretty convincing here. His leash is, we could adjust that, but that could be for a different day. Okay, so basically here we have selecting something from one image, bringing it onto another, maybe erasing what was there before, or making it look seamless so that he just covers the pavement instead of, if I still have the dog there like this, it'd be, you know, harder to make that illusion. Okay, another thing I noticed when looking at this image, that there might be some things in the background that we might want to get rid of, or use some of our healing tools. So we can try a few of them. So we have like some kids back here. We have this post. I don't know if we want to get rid of that or not. There's like this light pole thing. And I would suggest using some of the corrective tools that Photoshop offers, such as the spot healing brush tool. And then we also have the clone stamp and the one we just tried, which is the content aware fill. I think my dog is dreaming right now. Listen, wake up. Okay. Let's see. So over here, if we're going to get rid of this post, I would suggest using probably the clone stamp. So it borrows pixels from one area in the document and covers something else with those pixels. You can kind of paint with a brush that's loaded with pixels from somewhere else. So I'm going to borrow the pixels from over here in the trees and see if I can cover this. So here's the clone stamp. Looks like one of those old-fashioned stamps that teachers used to use to like give you an A+ or whatever. And I can make it smaller with my bracket keys, or you can go up here to the preset picker. This will adjust the size too. So I'm going to hold down Option and click, and this sets my point. And then from there, I can just paint with those pixels. So you can see what's happening. The crosshairs marks where I'm borrowing those pixels from. And if it doesn't look very convincing, I can do it multiple times from multiple places. So it kind of breaks up that like look of being copied. Okay, so far so good. Maybe borrow some of these pixels. Whoops, we don't want that white thing in there. Maybe cover that. So it's looking a little bit, yeah, a little bit more natural. Now I gotta get rid of this part up here. So I keep hitting Option and clicking to grab different colors. Okay, halfway there, looks pretty good. This bottom part's gonna be kind of difficult. I'll start with the clone stamp. Well, let's use actually the spot heal brush tool. So see what it does. Nothing. Hold on. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Oh my goodness. I'm on the tiger layer. Okay, so you gotta go to the background layer and then see what it does. Not good. So this would not be the best tool for that. Command Z, edit, undo. And I'm going to, instead of the spot heal brush, I'm going to try going down underneath to one of the hidden tools, which is called the patch tool. So the patch tool allows you to select an area and then just click and drag and replace it with a different area of the same shape. So I'm just going to select this. For some reason, it's not commanding. Let's try that again. Go over. There it goes. So I'm making a selection. And then I'm just going to drag with the same tool, and see this little patch arrow? hold on. I guess it works the other way. Command D. See this? This is weird. Usually it works the other way, where you select the object. I must have something. Oh, okay. If something's not working, you can either check what layer you're on, number one, or you can check the options bar. So there's probably some option that's clicked that you're not aware of. So normally you highlight it and then move it. But it worked either way. So we can then clean it up using maybe the spot heal brush tool on a smaller scale. So this will try and match whatever you're dragging over to the area around it. So it's kind of borrowing some of the colors from the people. Okay, now to get rid of this, we might need to get rid of everybody. Let's see what happens if I use the content aware fill. So I'm going to grab a rectangle. We're going to say this whole area, let's see what we can do with it. Okay, and we're going to see what Photoshop does automatically, then we can go back in and clean it up with the clone stamp. And again, this can be very helpful if you have distractions in the background, if you have something that's like bright red, because that tends to get people's attention first. You can really limit your distractors. Okay, so we're going to go to Edit, Fill, and then use Content Aware. And it's better. We can work with this. Okay, so now we just need to probably continue this line over and erase that stuff. So I'm not going to make it perfect. That would take some time, but I'm just going to hold down Option and click with the clone stamp tool, and then just bring that line over as straight as I can. Look at that. Maybe something down here. Option click. Whoops. To keep using the same pixels. There we go. That's something. And then just real quick, Option click. Paint with those pixels. Option click up here. Let's get rid of this whole area. Don't know what that is. That's a nice thing with trees and greenery is you can just pick from a lot of different places and make it look very organic. What does Bob Ross say? Trees don't grow in straight lines. They grow in whatever way makes them happy. So make some happy trees in the background. Okay, that's good enough. So there, we got rid of, we can kind of see what it was like before. Okay, so here it is, corrected. Here it was before, lots of distractions. Now all we really see is this guy right here. Okay, so the last thing that I want to show you is how to make a blue sky. So I realized that this is actually the top of a building, but we're just going to pretend like the top of the building ends here with the windows, and we're going to try and make the top half of this picture look blue, right where it is white. Okay, so the first thing that you'll want to do is make a selection of that color range back here on the background layer. So let's see, where can I move this? Oops. Okay, that will have to work. Okay, so using the select menu, make sure that we're on the right layer, and then we want to choose color range. So here we have an eyedropper, and we're going to select, and you can kind of see down here in the black and white copy what areas we have selected. So every time I click, it kind of adjusts what is selected. And we're just going to use the top half anyway. We can also add to the selection. Yeah, make it a little bit more. There we go. We're just really trying to affect the very top of the picture, and we can do that with a gradient later. Okay. So here I have the top half selected, and then of course everything else in the image that's white. So this works better with an image that doesn't have a lot of white, but we can make it work too. I'm going to create a new layer on top, a blank layer. There's nothing there. And then underneath the gradient tool, I'm going to use the paint bucket tool. So let's see what colors we have. If I can move my bar here. You guys probably can't see this. There it is. Okay. It's like right in the way. Okay, so I'm going to switch this so that the blue is like the foreground color. And that's a pretty intense blue, so I might even go up to my swatches and instead pick more of like a subtle blue, something like that. Okay, and then I'm going to use this fill bucket tool and fill it in. So you'll notice that it's also filling everywhere, and we will be able to hide that in a minute. So if you deselect, it looks kind of like outlined. You can really see that it wasn't selected the entire white area. So if you add a mask, then we can add, so down here at the bottom of the layer menu, you have the option of adding a layer mask, and this will affect what is hidden and what is revealed about that layer. So you can, underneath the paint bucket, grab the gradient tool, and it goes from black to white. So black is hidden, white is revealed. So we want just the top half to be revealed. So we just click and drag, see what happens, and then just keep going until it hides that blue, so you can see what the layer looks like. The bottom half is black, so that means it's hidden, and then the top like fourth is the only thing that's revealed. So now on this hue, we might want to add like a blending mode, something that makes it look a little bit more natural. So these top blending modes will affect only how the layer shows through. So this top half is like darkening, this bottom half is going to lighten it wherever we see it. And then here it creates contrast. Overlay is usually pretty natural looking, so you might want to use that. Vivid light is a little bit intense, but we can also lower the opacity too. So maybe we want this to be kind of transparent. So it just looks a little bit more blue than it was before. And then we can also add an adjustment layer to this layer 2. If you want to make it a little bit easier to tell what that is, I'm going to call that sky. And then under hue saturation, you might want to clip it to just the layer beneath, which is right here at the bottom. And now, when we change the color, it'll just change the color of that sky. Okay, so you kind of have to play with it. You have to lower the opacity a little bit more to make it look less noticeable. Try this one. Somewhere in the middle, just so it's a little bit less noticeable. Because usually you want a nice blue sky, but the best time for taking portraits is in overcast settings, so you usually can't get both a really well-lit, flattering portrait with a bright blue sky. So you almost have to rely on Photoshop or different techniques to make those photos seamless. Okay, any questions before we sign off here? All right, well, thank you for tuning in, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much, Ms. Warner.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye. There it is. I'm trying to find my window.